one of the things that becomes interesting, some of the people that I try to trace through the book were influential in 2015. I was so for those who don't know, I was like a mom activist in California I had my first baby in 2013, and in 2014 was the Disneyland measles outbreak, right? And I'd come from New York to California, and I was like, what is wrong with this state?
This is crazy, of course.
Because they had this thing called the personal belief exemption, where you could just decide that you were not going to get your kid a measles vaccine, and like everybody was supposed to be okay with that. Like you had just made that determination, and I thought, like, we live in a society. How does this work? This was very foreign to me as a New Yorker, as a transplant, where you don't have like that type of exemption. Simply didn't exist, right? You had a medical exemption, or you had a religious exemption, and if you were religious, you had to actually prove that you were religious. You couldn't just find faith like in relation to vaccines. You had to have it in other capacities. And as I was, and I got very involved in like, how do we improve vaccination rates in California schools? Because I was sending my kid to to public kindergarten, right? He was going to go to public kindergarten, and he was a baby. So this was my sort of like long-term plan, was to try to help improve that. And some of the people that we're writing about and talking about in 2015 their influence grows massively between 2015 and COVID. And by the time COVID is ready, by the time COVID happens, like they already have an incredible organizing infrastructure. They have massive numbers of followers. They have been, speaking about how the measles vaccine gives you autism and all of these other things for now the better part of half a decade online, right? And meanwhile, the CDC has done absolutely nothing between these two events to in any way shift or modernize its communication. Again, these are just some people online. And I thought, this is going to be an absolute disaster. This is going to be an absolute mess. Before the virus even made it to American soil, anti-vaccine activists in December 2020 and that would have been December 2019 and January 2020, are out there making videos about how this is really great for us, guys. They're going to rush through a vaccine, and we're going to finally be able to tell the people like what they've ignored all along with these polio and measles vaccines. And so it was very much they really saw the moment. They had the organizing infrastructure, and they went for it. And what I thought was so fascinating about that, I followed these characters, the sort of evolution over the years, the amassing of more and more influence as people become deeply entrenched in factions. But what you also start to see is people who have never talked about that topic begin to migrate their content to that topic, because all of a sudden that's what people are doom scrolling about. That's what people are looking for. And so all of a sudden now you might have been, a standard political influencer, but here is the thing that you're going to talk about now. You might have been a sports influencer, but you can talk about vaccines and sports, And so all of a sudden you have this topic, and what you start to see is like just the pivoting of content to where the attention locus is. And it's not that they have any even, I would argue, significant, there's interest in the topic, but it's not that they want to become experts in it. It's just that they're really able to galvanize, to capitalize on that attention. And so you see the sort of pivoting, like all things become COVID. Yes. And then as the pandemic, as people return to normal life, now 2-3 years later, what you do start to see is again, some of them they have long COVID, or they had some sort of significant issue with a vaccine or whatever, and there is like a personal reason to do that. But it is the migration of the so-called COVID influencers as they're moving back into politics. We have an election, right? That's what they're going to talk about now. There is, whatever abortion rights becomes a thing briefly in there. You have you see them basically just like migrate to whatever the outrage of the day is, and the culture war just becomes a constant stream of like, I will pivot my content to talk about this, and this, so I can maintain that energy, maintain that attention, not because I even have necessarily a deeply, sincerely held viewpoint or expertise or whatever, but just...
Well, it's a weird combination of supply and demand.
Yeah.
So there are these bases, like there is this sort of latent belief in an idea, and then there's also I am an influencer, and thus I have to create large amounts of content to keep my machine operational.
Right.
And so it's like, who is leading who? It's this fascinating thing. And I think they're kind of, I would maybe argue there's like two different types of influencers. There's someone who's like really into a specific thing, and they love that thing, and they know that thing, and that's what they talk about. And then there's people who are sort of attracted to influence itself. Like,
Right.
I want to have attention. I need to have an audience. I need to be important. I'm gravitating towards the energy of being popular and important. And I think we've kind of watched now that the space has existed for a while. You see, there's like the people who are like, this is what I do, so I talk about it, whether it's popular or unpopular. And then there's a group of people who they go, well, how do I go over here? How do I go over here? And you kind of watch. That's what I mean, where you sort of watch them get infected with a version of a virus where like they were, you talk about like the guitar guy in the book. He's like a guitarist, but he's not that popular. And then he touches a trending topic, or the trending topic touches him.
Right.
And then finally it's like he gets the thing he's always wanted. Like the virus finds the host. and the host is like the hunger for attention and fame and the love of like surfing that.
Right.
And then so now he's like, that's my thing.